Center.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me begin by saying that, like all Canadians, I have watched with horror the events unfolding in Israel and in Gaza. Violence and acts of terror are never the way to lasting peace and justice. Hamas is an illegal terrorist group that does not represent or advance the cause of the Palestinian people or the Muslim people. I condemn the intentional targeting of innocent civilians regardless of their political views or affiliation. I worry for the safety of the innocent civilians caught in the middle of this escalating conflict, especially the children. Sorry, Mr. Speaker, just wanted to say that I will be sharing my time with the member for Uttarakhand. I worry for the safety of the innocent civilians caught in the middle of this escalating conflict, especially the children. I'm also concerned about rising incidents of Islamophobia and anti-Semitism here in Canada. In Canada, we live in peace with our neighbors. While we worry for our friends and loved ones overseas, we must treat each other with patience, kindness, and understanding. My prayers are with all those deeply worried and traumatized by the events in Israel and Palestine. As a mother, I worry about the trauma so many children must be experiencing. I know everyone has been traumatized by the news of the attack on a Muslim family in Chicago and the death of a 6-year-old boy targeted because they are Muslim. As a mother, I worry for the safety of my own children when they go out to eat, play basketball, or go to work. We are all worried. I came to Canada to live a peaceful life. I condemn all incidents of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, and I urge any incidents of hateful violence to be investigated by the proper authorities. There is no place for any hatred in Canada. I have heard from many in the Scarborough community deeply concerned about Israel's order to 1 million innocent civilians to flee Gaza under an unrealistic deadline. International law is clear. Civilians must be protected and must not be the targets. It is painfully clear that a humanitarian crisis is underway in Gaza. The situation is dire. There are serious shortages of water and food. Hospitals have run out of vital supplies. Electricity is not available. Casualties are mounting by the day. The siege of Gaza must end. The innocent civilians of Gaza must not be the victims of this conflict. The World Health Organization and the United Nations has urged this order be rescinded. There needs to be a humanitarian corridor and support for those innocent civilians, including food, water, and electricity. The United Nations and other humanitarian agencies are ready to do that work, are ready to help. Canada must do all it can to ensure the safe and unimpeded access of relief via a humanitarian corridor. I urge Canada to be a voice for an immediate ceasefire, the end of all violence, and the return of all hostages home to their families. While our focus is on the immediate crisis and the protection of the innocent civilians of Gaza, the West Bank, and Israel, we must not lose sight of the need to end the cycle of violence. And the only way to do that is through dialogue. History has shown us that war and violence is never the way to peace and justice. Canada has long been a proponent for a two-state solution, a free and democratic state of Israel and a free and democratic state of Palestine living side by side in peace. Sadly, that dream seems to slip further and further away every day, and yet I don't know what other option for a better future there could be. Canadian policy is also clear. Israeli settlements in the occupied territories are a violation of the Fourth Geneva Convention and constitute a serious obstacle to achieving a comprehensive, just, and lasting peace. And I again call for Canada to recognize the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Code. All those guilty of war crimes must face international justice. When I speak to the members of the Palestinian community. I speak, Mr. Speaker, they are tired. They are in pain. They feel their future has been on hold for generations. They feel their freedom has been denied. They just want what all of us want, what all of us take for granted, to be able to work, walk their children to school, to be able to go to work, to be able to give their next generation a better future without security checkpoints and constant worry. They yearn for hope, Mr. Speaker, but so many, too many, are without hope. They can't see a better future for their children. Let Canada be a voice for hope. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I thank my colleague for her remarks. I know she's very sincere in her convictions on these matters. I wanted to pick up on the issue of the importance of establishing a humanitarian corridor and safe zones for the distribution of essential humanitarian assistance. Our party supports that and has called for that. I want to note that the last time there was conflict between Gaza and Israel, there was one instance that we heard about at the Foreign Affairs Committee where Hamas intentionally targeted a humanitarian crossing point. I asked Canadian officials, why would Hamas intentionally target a humanitarian crossing? Canadian officials at the time said, quote, in terms of the reason, obviously the intention and the pressure on all parties, Hamas may not have wanted alleviated instantly to keep the pressure on and keep sending the message. I wonder if the member would agree that as vitally important as establishing these humanitarian corridors are, one of the challenges has been historically that Hamas has shown capricious disregard for the lives of Palestinians and has in fact used their pain and the prevention of access for humanitarian aid as a tool to try to exert more pressure on the international community.
The honourable member from Scarborough Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank the honourable member for his question. And as I said in my speech also, it is really very important that all parties to a conflict have the responsibility to abide by international law. And international law is very clear. Civilians must be protected and must not be the targets. So the situation right now is very dire. There are serious shortages of food and water. There is no water, there is no life in Gaza. Hospitals have run out of vital supplies, so it is really very important that all efforts are made. And as Minister for International Development has said in the morning, that all the humanitarian aid should be directed towards the people, the civilians who don't have any food or any water. So the innocent civilians of Gaza must not be the victims of this conflict. Thank you.
The honourable member from Winnipeg South Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank my colleague for her sincerity, her conviction, and her articulation of support for the pursuit of peace. And I understand the pain that she is feeling and the fear that she is feeling as a leader, both in her religious and faith-based community, but also in her responsibilities as a parliamentarian, broadly speaking. I think that all of us are feeling that way right now. We will have differences, Mr. Speaker, in terms of the way in which we approach solutions to this very difficult conflict. On this side of the House, of course, there will be difficult conversations, as I imagine there will be on that side of the House. What I'd like to ask my colleague is, in what ways can we, both within these walls and outside of these walls, as colleagues and as parliamentary leaders, start to bring the temperature down in the country and work together despite these differences in order to restore a sense of security and safety for all Canadians? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
A brief answer, if that is possible, from the member from Scarborough Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I really want to thank the honourable member for his question. I'm also really very concerned about what's happening domestically, the increase in the incidence of Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. So while we worry about our friends and loved ones overseas, I think it's really very important that we must treat each other with patience, kindness, and understanding. This is what the Canadians are known for. Canadians, I know, are worried. I heard it while I was in my riding last week. But I think it is really very important that we all come together to make sure that we fight anti-Semitism and Islamophobia right here in Canada so that everyone feels safe. Thank you.
Une brève et courte
A short question from my colleague, the Honourable Member for Trois-Rivières. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague for his speech. I appreciate her sensitivity. Tonight we're hearing a lot about good intentions, but beyond good intentions, what specifically can be done? Thank you.
Député de Scarborough Centre.
Honourable Member for Scarborough Centre.
I want to thank the Honourable Member for his question. As I said also in my remarks, that the only way to break out of this cycle of violence is for both Israelis and Palestinians to work together to build a just peace that recognizes the rights of Israelis and Palestinians who only want to live in peace, freedom, and security. We have a lot of work to do to get there. So I hope Canada can play its role to make sure that we call for lasting peace in that region.
Je remercie les députés
I would ask members to behave during